Hey there, friends, and welcome to Women, Wine, and Song, the podcast. Today I get to have a sweet friend of mine back. Her name is Kat, and she just got here, so let's welcome her to the group. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good to see you. Holy crap.
You two. Hold on. I have to be technologically advanced here.
I need to be more This is awful what I got going on right now. I tried to find the here. I'm like, no, that's just the way it is.
I'm having like a panic moment. I just went to go like pull out my laptop to like start it, and I'm missing a piece off my charger, and I'm just like, no.
Dang it. That's the worst. Like, yeah. I have that problem a lot because I'll just bring my cord with me and then like forget to bring. I call it the butt that goes into the wall. Like I'll forget that.
Yeah.
And then people are like, no, I have an iPhone. It takes a dip, like.
Yeah. I'm missing the little piece, like the piece that goes from like, because it was a universal charger because my charger like broke. And so it's like the piece that goes from the charger itself into the, like the male part that goes into the female part of the computer. So yeah, what are you going to do? I guess I'm going to Best Buy at some point to buy a new one, but
yeah,
alas, there it is.
Yeah. It's always something, right?
Yeah, always something.
I haven't done this in like a minute. Like I feel like the last time I recorded was in January. So it's like, oh shit.
Oh wow.
Like I haven't set up the rig in a hot minute. I'm like, oh my God, what else do I need to do? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'm glad I could help you sort of like zhuzh it back up,
Yes. It's always good to have you here. So for people who don't know you, and
yeah,
the story has changed a lot since I had you, because the last time we talked on here was 2020.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like post-COVID or pre-COVID, like quarantine.
It was smack in the middle of it. It was like I feel like it was my first recording was in like July, so I think we talked in like maybe August or September.
It was okay, so it was November because I wasn't sure, and I went onto YouTube today to look real quick just to be like, I want to know what it was.
Yeah. Okay. So it was like right in the middle. I think like things kind of opened up a little bit during the summer, but then it was like right back down to shutdown. So that was the last time we talked, and there was a lot going on then. But now you have updates for us. So tell us, what are you up to?
Yeah.
What are you involved in music?
So I feel like I'm having a midlife crisis inside my midlife crisis. Like it's amazing. I think the last time we talked, I was back in school, going to school for dietetics nutrition, which has been really fun and I love it. But then sort of like two things happened. One, I had to start taking more and more chemistry. And and the science just really, as much as I wanted to do this, the science is just really hard. Yeah. And becoming a nutritionist and a dietitian, like, to really it's kind of like going to medical school. You have to do an internship. It's 1,200 hours. It's a lot of commitment. The music industry opened back up, and then all the stuff I thought that I hated, I've sort of forgotten about. And I think there's been a lot of reasons for that. So now I've kind of shifted a little bit. I'm still back in school, but I've always been a double major. And my second major is writing, which I know some people know, like I used to write for New York State Music. I love to write. I love creative writing. I love poetry. I love all of it. I'm studying specifically technical writing. So long story short, I dropped the nutrition degree. I'm now just focusing on writing. Doing technical writing, which is really great, grant writing, which I hope I can use not only to help musicians, but because I'd love to do some stuff in like the arts. Yeah. But I'm also really big, I have kind of a soft spot for fighting for food security, which for people who don't know what food security is, I guess let me talk about the inverse, which is food insecurity, which is someone's inability to have access to adequate, like fresh food, fresh fruits and vegetables. Sometimes it's for a variety of reasons, but there's a lot of people out there that, especially during the pandemic, we saw it, that just don't have access to like really good, solid food. So that's sort of become a passion of mine.
Do they call it the desert when it's sparse and there's not like,
yes,
it's like, it's bad.
Yeah. And especially for people either in like rural communities, or maybe you live in like a city where you don't, maybe the family doesn't have access to a vehicle and the closest store they have is like a bodega. then what you're doing is they're eating a lot of processed food. They're not getting like those fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, whole grains, the things that you just really need to sort of like function correctly as a human. A lot of added sugar, a lot of just, high fructose corn syrup.
Excess bullshit is what most people are eating these days. I mean,
yeah,
really across the board, but then when you get into these like impoverished areas or like you said, rural, if you're not growing your own food, you don't have access to nourishment. It's like, it will make you full, but it's not nourishing your body.
Right. And it's like, something for me that like I take a look at is like, for instance, like, yeah, you can get a box of Kraft mac and cheese and it's great. It's tasty, but like, that's not the same thing as eating like, some broccoli with like maybe a little bit of cheese on it or, just all those things. It's just a whole different thing. And it really understanding and learning how your body functions on food, and how your body processes food. It's been like a huge game changer for me. But in the meantime of going back to school, like venues started opening back up, and right before COVID happened, right before quarantine, I had taken a full-time position working at the Town Ballroom, which is our like 1,000-person music venue at Buffalo. In Buffalo, and I was supposed to do artist relations and merch coordination, and then everything stopped. And I was really lucky that the venue sort of kept me employed. It was kind of fun during quarantine because I was doing a lot of projects. So I got to like redecorate the green rooms and like paint inside the venue. And the venue is historic, and there's it has, since the new owners have had it for about a little bit over I think a little over a decade, they haven't been able to make the improvements that they wanted to make, because like when can you shut down?
Yeah, there's no
like when can you shut down to paint a green room? When can you do all of that stuff? So I was really lucky in that I kind of got to like run with that and do that. And then live music came back, and being inside the building has just been fantastic. The two owners of the ballroom are two guys named Donnie and Artie. Artie actually used to be the manager for the Goo Goo Dolls back in the day.
Oh,
yeah. And they're both incredible humans. And I love working for them so much because I've just sort of been able to take the role and carve my own niche out with it. And at the end of the day, I love artist hospitality. I love, like, for me, artist hospitality is so important inside a venue. Having toured with Aqueous and Dopapod most recently, you realize how important it is when you go into a venue for it to feel a little bit like home away from home.
Yeah, well, if you don't feel welcomed and into it, then it's going to throw a wrench in the entire night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And you set the tempo, for an artist to go into their green room and have all the things that they've requested, and to feel warm and welcome and comforted, and, have a space to like defrag and get out of the van or the bus or whatever that is, or even like ordering food for them for the night, or, helping them find stuff. It's really small, little simple things that I don't think fans in the room realize what a difference that makes, because then that sets the mood for the artist, and then they can go on and have a great show and hopefully enjoy the fans then enjoy the experience. It's like that exchange of energy. So I love being able to be a part of it.
Well, the fans sadly can be like pretty ignorant to the whole thing, like what goes into putting a show on. Like, I find myself having to talk my friends down sometimes from like, they're upset that the show's starting late, or, what I mean? Like some little minor thing. And I'm like, well, this probably happened, or this could have happened, or, you know what I mean? Like trying to reason.
Yeah.
Hey, people are working and sometimes things don't go right and you have to troubleshoot.
Yes. Like we had an incident happen over January. There was a band that was coming in, and it was one of those things where we ended up having to cancel the show, and we canceled the show 2 days before. And what the venue cited was obviously like the venues or promoters don't go into a huge amount of detail. They just said it was weather related. And in Buffalo, we'd gotten hit with like tons of snow. There had been a blizzard. And at that point in time, when we canceled, everybody was like, well, like, the roads are clear. Like, I don't understand. And it's like, yeah, the roads are clear, but you guys, there's a 5-foot wall of snow outside the venue. It's iced over. We were supposed to get like another little bit of like, Buffalo, it's notorious for like, it rains and then it freezes and then it rains, and you've got like ice, and then the temperature that night was supposed to drop down into the teens, which it did. And I just don't think, like, in that moment fans were upset about it, and we're like, but you guys don't understand, like, first of all, what are we going to do, like bring out a flamethrower to get rid of this wall of snow that the city is like pushed up
equipment into the building? Like, how are you going to do that?
Yeah, right. And the safety issue of like, and this is a band that had like a really big light setup and huge rigs, and like trying to get all of that equipment in so the band could perform the show that they wanted to perform for the fans, and us knowing like it's just a safety issue, like it's not safe, and it's going to be like 3 degrees outside, like that's like not even safe for the crew.
Waiting in line to get inside, like that's not super safe to have them standing in the cold waiting, you know. Like, it's just
it's actually like funny because we there's an artist named, this was a fun sort of incident talking to you about how fans just don't sort of like realize. There was an interesting incident recently where, and I want to say that I say this, what I'm about to say, I say with all the love in the world, but I want to hit it real. You know, there's an artist named Jelly Roll, and he's a country artist that's also part of like the ICP family. Cool. So let's just get that as your mental image. Country artist, also ICP.
Already love it.
Blue collar, hardworking fan base, right? We get that. The show had already been postponed once. We open doors. As far as we know, the artist is en route. Then we start hearing at the venue after we've opened doors that his flight's delayed. Now, this is another thing that I don't want to go too much on it because I kind of want to like wag my finger a little bit and be like, shame on you. But as an artist, you have a bit of a responsibility to make sure that your flight isn't coming in at 7:00 when you're supposed to take the stage at 9.
No shit.
Because
time to load in and sound check and all of the
right. Yeah, because of like things like this, right? And so then his flight was delayed. And then there was weather out of Baltimore. So his flight was canceled and he couldn't get there. Now, we've been open for 2.5 hours. And this fan base, again, country fan base, part of the ICP family, they've been drinking for 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah.
We then subsequently had to tell all these people that he wasn't showing up and the show was canceled. And on social media, what I found interesting was that people were like, oh, the venue knew this. You wanted to take our money. And I'm like, let me trust that the last thing any of us wanted to do was to bring you into our venue, get you highly intoxicated, and then be like, oh yeah, by the way, there's no show. Like I have never, I bartend at the ballroom now too, which has been so much fun for me. And I'm like, I've never felt unsafe in that building until that moment because the fans were so pissed off, as they should have been.
Yeah.
You know, like I would have been pissed off too.
Than you. Right. Like,
yeah. And like, I'm like, I had a girl threaten to throw a drink on me. Like, you know, and look, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not innocent in this, you know, like when in those moments, like you're trying to be nice, but when people are coming at you,
yeah.
And you know, like
the person you talk to, you have to give the same spiel to. And
yeah. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I'm like literally at that moment, I'm like, I'm a bartender. I'm not in the band's management team. I literally have no other information for you. Like, I don't know what else you want me to do. But really, it was just that sort of like that inability to sort of see from the fan base for a moment. Like, and I also think though that's when you have an artist that you love. You don't want to think they've done anything wrong.
Exactly.
You want to blame it on somebody else because there's that emotional connection.
Yeah, like this guy's not really that much of a fucking asshole or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that can't be the case. It had to be the venue or the promoter that did this. The venue, you know,
for sure.
But at the same time, we had a show like last night. Like, so at the ballroom now we have 2 venues, and we have a venue inside the venue, which is really cool. We have a smaller venue that holds about 400. And last night we had Tyler Rich, who's a country artist. And like, that was a totally different experience. The fan base was great. You know, they were taking care of the bar staff. They were tipping well. They were polite. You know, they waited their turn to get served. Yeah. And then when you have experiences like that, it just makes it so worth it. And I'm so enamored with I don't even want to call it a job because it doesn't feel like a job. It just, I get to go into work. I get to like mix drinks, which I love being behind the bar. I love bartending.
It's so fun.
I got out of it in 2017 when I sort of started my business and then started working for Aqueous full time. And I forgot how much I love being behind the bar. Part of my job is I get to make all the specialty drinks for the shows. And that's equally as fun to sort of like dig through a band's like catalog and either find song lyrics or song titles and to see fans get excited where they're like, oh, I want to drink this because it like it has that connection to the artist.
Song. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes such a different experience. And ultimately, like working inside a venue like this, like it's now been fun to sort of see the shift. Like touring with bands, it was fun because you knew you were coming into somebody's home and you were helping them have a great experience. And now it's sort of the opposite. It's welcoming an artist into my home.
Yeah.
And the fans into my home and being able to make sure they all have a great experience. And ultimately, I think that that's what I've realized, which is part of the reason I was like, yeah, maybe the nutrition stuff isn't really for me. And I think it was, having those experiences and just sort of like loving where I am in that has been absolutely amazing. So, it's
so cool just being able to be like at a venue and see like my favorite, like I work at the Mish and I do, I'm venue staff, but I do merch usually. And it's so cool to be able to watch a crowd of people who maybe listen to a type of music that you would never listen to in your life. But watching them have the experience is like, it always like, I'm always on the verge of tears if the people are really into it, you know, it's just like,
yeah,
this is so beautiful, you know, like,
well, because I know what that's like for me as a fan having that experience, you know, like I can remember going to see a band for the, like, to this day, I remember like my first Twiddle show, like it was yesterday, you know, and it was like 2012, 2013. I remember it so well. I couldn't even tell you the year. No, it was 2013, but, I remember like walking into the venue and like, at the time, Mickey was still playing the Becker and like seeing like that Willy Wonka looking guitar up on stage and like getting to hear the song I love the most for the first time. And yeah, so I agree with you. It is such a beautiful experience to sort of see that unfold. I love it.
Yeah. And you can enjoy like watching people enjoy it. Like you genuinely don't have to like the music at all, but you just being around so many people who are there for the same reason, it's moving. I don't know. It's I'll be like,
so much
fun.
Sell
merch at the Mish. I just sell merch, but it's like that. Every venue position is like important.
Oh, sure.
Maybe not equally important, but each one has its role.
And I'll tell you something about merch, which I'm sure when I say I tell you, I'm not telling you really anything. I think more for the people sort of listening, but also just sort of like, to your point, merch is such an interesting experience to work because for a lot of people, especially when you work for the bands, you're the closest they're going to get to sort of interacting with the band or have the band experience. And in a lot of cases, especially I found when I was working for like Aqueous or Twiddle or Dopapod, as a fan, you know the music. And so people want to come up and they're asking you like, what song are they playing? Or, you know, like, oh, I love that shirt. That's my favorite lyric or like whatever it is. And you can sort of have those conversations. And I think something that's really important in the band experience and just in a lot of like commercial experiences anyway is emotional branding and like people like having that connection, and that piece of merch that you're selling to somebody is their memory of that experience. And so there's a big connection with that people walk away and take away from. And like, when you have a really friendly face at the merch table and they help you find the right size and, you know, they help you pick out the shirt and you have that sort of like moment with them, you know, you walk away from that really good versus like, there have been plenty of times and we've all seen it where you walk up to the merch table and you can tell like that person probably hasn't slept. They're probably hungover. They don't give two shits about whether or not you get the right size. They're not friendly. Yeah. That makes a difference. And it makes a difference how you, especially in a lot of cases, the last experience somebody has when they leave the venue is that experience at the merch table because if people buy their merch last. Yeah. So you walk away from that merch table with a bad experience, that's what you're going to remember. So it's
absolutely. And you can kind of tell when it's someone who's like employed, like I'm employed through the venue at the Mish. So there are definitely shows where people are like, how are you reading a book right now? How are you writing right now? And it's like, well, it's just not, you know, like until I have someone I need to talk to or do, you know what I mean? And I don't do that usually because I feel like it's disrespectful to everyone. Like it's rude to the crowd who's really into this music.
Yeah.
It's rude to the performer, but like also I'm here for 10 plus hours and I'm standing
Yeah.
at a table where I can't do anything. So it's like there's got to be some kind of balance, you know. But it's I don't know. It's such an interesting thing being like merch. You get the funniest questions like so like just random shit about the band, especially if you're working for the venue and not the band, like you're not actually an employee of the band, it's like helping out because you work for the venue.
Yeah.
It's like, I have no idea. I don't know
Yeah.
what's coming out
You're
with
like,
another drop. I don't know. I don't know why
yeah.
they don't have an album. I have no idea why there's no poster.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is always interesting to sort of be like, I don't know. It's fun. It's funny because like I usually have one of two excuses. Either I'm not sure I work for the venue, or I don't know I work for the band. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you gotta go back and forth, you know?
Well, and sometimes
Somebody's like,
play that card anyway. Like I just
yeah,
really don't have an answer and can't get anywhere. So
yeah. Yeah, so merch world is fun, and I'm actually super lucky because here during the summer I'm the merch coordinator for Art Park, which is our sort of outdoor venue here. It's actually in Lewiston, which is it's like just near Niagara Falls, so it's like a half an hour drive, but I'm super stoked because I get to see so much great music. Like I'm really excited. Like Weird Al is playing this summer, and I love Weird Al,
Dude.
and so it's cool because I work with all these merch managers and I learned so much. I did it last summer and I learned so much about merch that I had never known because you're working in essence for bigger tours. And then sometimes I get hired on as an extra seller, which is really great. And sometimes I just get to see the show. But like this summer, yeah, we've got Weird Al is one of them, War on Drugs, Modest Mouse.
Dope.
I know I'm forgetting like so many that are like so super cool, and I'm gonna get off of this with you and be like, oh, I should have talked about that. But so yeah, that's been kind of fun. And then I did the one thing I said I wasn't gonna do anymore, and I couldn't help myself. I am now also managing a band. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna manage. I'm not gonna book. I'm not gonna do any of it. And yeah, I'm doing that now too. So I'm like, that's it. No more no more irons in the fire. That is it.
Crazy. But like all of a sudden you look up and you've got 75 projects and you're like, oh shit. Like,
yeah.
I mean, for me personally, like 2020, hit and I got like all these like, cool, I'll start this podcast because I got nothing going on, and cool, I'll try and work with a few bands, but there's nothing to book. There's nothing going on. Everything shut down. So like, and then all of a sudden I'm selling natural body care and I'm knitting and I'm, like flyering, promoting, like all sorts. I'm like, how does this happen? And how do I keep track of it all? Like, how do you keep track of it all? You seem like you have an awful lot going on.
Google Calendar is my friend. I am the color-coded Google Calendar girl. And then, and I think that that's really important because from a time management standpoint, it's super important to sort of know like when you're overcommitting and undercommitting to stuff. And that has been really crucial for me. Like, for instance, I just got a job offer that it's only technically for the summer. It's some street team stuff for non-music industry stuff. It's a potential cannabis industry sort of street team thing. And I looked at my calendar and I was just like, I know it's going to be good money and I know that I really want to do it, but what am I sacrificing in quality over quantity if if I take this? And so I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to turn that down. And even recently I had a band that I've worked with previously reach out to me and say, hey, we'd love for you to sort of come back on board. And again, I had to sort of take stock in it. And that was a really hard emotional moment for me to like say to them, I love you so much. And I'm so honored that you've asked me. And I'm so, this is such a hard thing to say no to, but like, that was like, if I want to back up for a minute, I kind of want to back up for a minute. Cause I think that this segues nicely into something. One of the things I really did at the start of COVID, because I had the time to do it, but also I had to take a lot of personal stock in myself, was therapy. Yeah. And what has come out of therapy for me has sort of been the toxicity of, I mean, I want to be cautious when I say this, but the toxicity of the music industry and how
it's bad.
your face in that moment. No, because I know that you feel me. And I think that it's kind of like twofold. I think as women in this industry, it's hard to say no, because as women, we're just people pleasers, a lot of us, and we want to make everyone around us happy. And we feel like a lot of times when we say no to things, at least for me, when I say no to something, it's sort of like breaks my heart a little bit, because I want to believe that I'm Superwoman and I can do everything. And what I realized,
love these people. It's like, I love you so much. Like, I really want to say yes to you, but
and what I realized was, for me personally, and I know for a lot of my musician friends, for a lot of other people, COVID was so hard because their livelihoods changed. And I was very lucky that I was able to find a livelihood that made me really good money working sort of in the COVID industry during COVID, if you want to call it the COVID industry. Because I was doing I was working at testing sites and immunization sites, and that was like a nice price, it was a nice salary.
They pay well. And does it in the mountains. I'm like, what?
Yeah. And so it was an easy transition for me. But what I kind of had sort of like silently been to myself, like, I just need a hard reset. I need a hard reset. I need everything to like stop. And I was actually starting to very slowly not decline relationships, but in certain working relationships, because I knew from a mental health standpoint that that's what was best for me. And start to do therapy to really sort of understand where those behaviors come from. And it's been nice because COVID sort of gave me a year and a half of being able to learn how to say no, learn how to sit with my guilt in those moments, learn how to know that it's my best interest that I'm looking after. And so I think that has been a big shift for me. And it's been the reason why I could look at that artist and say, I love you guys so much, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And
it's so
important. Yeah.
Like a lot of people, I don't know, do not have that, like they don't have the ability. And then what winds up happening a lot of the time is that they'll say yes, but they're overcommitted, and then they wind up flaking. And it's like,
yes,
I hate flaking on people. Like there are definitely times where you have to flake. I'm sick, I have a migraine, I don't have, like my babysitter canceled. Like there are things that happen for sure, but like when it's just a simple fact that you could have said no in the beginning because you knew it was too much and you didn't because you want to prove something, and then now it's the time and I don't have your help because you overcommit, whatever. It's just, it's hard. It's like, it would be better to just be honest up front, but people can't be honest with themselves about it.
And that was also a lot of my truth, was not only not being upfront with myself about it, but I was so desperate to sort of start my business and get it off the ground that I devalued everything that I was doing. And from a emotional perspective within myself, but from a fiscal standpoint. And that's one thing that I think anyone who owns, if you, no matter what kind of business you have, you should definitely like seek to understand what your true value is, especially from a fiscal standpoint, because like that was ultimately, I can look back at that and say that now, that like the issue for me was I had devalued fiscally what I was doing so much that I was offering my services to bands at such a low rate that I had to like have multiple bands and festivals going at once. And then I wasn't doing anything well.
Right.
And I actually was like looking back at that recently, because I was like, who have I worked with? And I can remember at one point, literally at one point, I had on my plate, I was running street teams for Aqueous, Dopapod, Munyon, Spafford, Twiddle. So that's 5 bands in the jam scene, plus doing like Bumpin' Uglies, Tropodelic, Nightlights, Levitate, Blue Heron. Like it was like so many, and I was doing it all by myself.
Yeah.
And if you say, even if I'm working with 10 different artists or festivals at one time, and I'm contributing 4 hours a week to that, that's 40 hours. And running any one of those should have been a 10 to 20 hour week commitment.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
But I was so desperate to sort of like do the damn thing that I devalued who I was. And so when I was able to sort of unintentionally dissolve all of those and just not do it anymore and have that hard reset, I think it really sort of shifted where I was. And it's making it, like I said, it's making it so much easier now to say, hey, I want to do X and I want to do X and that's it. And what's nice for me now that I can actually sit back and look at this too, is that because I'm working at the venue and because I'm bartending, fiscally, I'm great. Like I'm able to live on my own. I have my own place. I'm able to, still travel and do the things that I want to do, while going back to school. And so then I can take on a project like managing a band. And I don't need to necessarily be in a position, because this is an upstart. I don't necessarily need to be in a position where I'm making money per se.
Yeah.
I can help the band grow, and fiscally it can be a sweat equity passion project.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be fiscally worried about undervaluing, because hopefully as the band grows and I grow with the band.
Yes.
I we'll kind of go from there.
Shit.
Yeah. So can I give the band a shout out? Can I talk about the band for a minute? Okay. Because I know we have a lot of jam. I am assuming you have a lot of jam followers, a lot of people that follow you.
Yeah.
Jam scene.
I mean, I don't think I have a lot of followers at all. So.
But don't devalue you, because no matter how many subscribers or followers you have people and they're listening. And, that's one of those things about marketing. One person hears something and they'll tell 3 people, or one person has a great experience and they'll have 3 people. So
wait, before you tell me about your band, I have to tell you a story about Aqueous in Colorado recently.
Yes. Let me hear it.
This woman, Kelly, I don't know if you know her. She's an Aqueous fan, and she was talking about how she's like middle-aged, blonde lady, super sweet. And she's come up to me twice now, only at Aqueous shows. And she mentioned you and said, I just watched the episode with Kat, blah, blah. And she's
cool.
Yeah. And she's like, she'll be like, you're my favorite podcaster. And she's so sweet. And it's just the coolest thing. She was super stoked about our episode together, but I didn't know if you knew her. Her name's Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know her? I don't know if you want to give her last name out on air. But.
I don't know her last name. I have her on Instagram though. So later when I can look at it.
Yeah. Hit me up. Because I'm pretty sure, because Kelly is such a common name. So I'm just like, oh no, I know 100 Kellys, but
right.
Yeah. So I'm working with this band out of Buffalo called Everwine. That's EBERWINE, just for the record. They just dropped debut single on it's all across all streaming platforms. The debut album is supposed to be coming out soon. And what's really cool about this band is, so it's kind of like the brainchild project of a guy named Todd Everwine, who's an incredible guitar player. And his background is rooted in sort of like a blues rock world. And he used to tour, used to travel a lot, sort of took a break from that. Very well known here in the Buffalo scene. Actually, one of my favorite memories is he does a project called Everwine and Friends. And there was this interesting moment where when Curveball got canceled, we were driving back home on that Thursday, and then we found out that he was doing a show at a local place, Everwine and Friends, and Dave Loss from Aqueous was on the bill to play with him, because it was sort of like a rotating cast of people. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Ryan Nogle was also former Aqueous drummer, also with the band Functional Flow, was playing on that show as well. So I was like, all right, well, let's pop in and go. And so we ended up going, and then Mike showed up, and I think Evan was there, and then everybody got on stage, and they did a cover of Strange Times, and it was so good.
That's awesome.
It was so great to see all of that. So I've known Todd for like years on and off, and we recently reconnected, and at first I was like, no, dude, I'm not going to work with the bands. I'm not going to do it. I can't. I don't have the time. I can't. And then he hit me up and one day and was like, hey, do you want to hear the new single? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And then I heard it and I was just like, okay, yeah, I want in. Like I want in. Like I want to do this. And so
Yeah.
I'm really super excited. It's jammy, but it's rocky and it's bluesy. It's like
Yeah, it
it's
was almost
everything.
like Americana. Like it kind of gave me that Americana vibe. I don't even know really how you classify Americana, but when what you sent to me, I was like, oh, cool. Like
Yeah,
it is very like
yeah.
rock and roll, but
Oh, that's right, right. And I think you heard the original sort of like roughly mixed single. I don't know if you've heard like the latest version of it, but like
it didn't sound like done,
yeah.
but it
Yeah, because
sounded good.
they've added like vocals to it or some, you know, like harmonies and stuff. And for me, what I love about it is it has some like 90s alt rock
Yeah,
vibes to it.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, when I think Americana, I think a little bit more like
It's like Elvis-y. I don't know. What is
yeah,
American?
I think a little bit more like I don't even want to say bluegrass, but bluegrass and Americana sort of get like lumped together a
Yeah,
lot. Like for
yeah.
me, Americana always reads a little bit more folky. Then I feel like this does, where this has a little bit more like I don't know, like
It's gritty.
kind of yeah, it's got some grit to it. I think there's like for me, I'm just super passionate about the project because I think it fills a lane that maybe isn't being filled right now by anybody in the jam scene, which is cool. So if you know, like it's definitely a band that if you like the Grateful Dead and Fish, but also like Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam, you
Perfect.
know, like this will be the project for you. And I'm amazed every time I watch him play. Like I always knew he was a great player, but now working for the band and being at shows, and I just watch it, and it's there's a joy that like he specifically has when he plays. It's incredible to watch, and I just know that if people get that live experience, they're going to be hooked. They're going to be hooked because it's just insane. It's so great.
I love it. And I love that you get to work with them without the like financial pressure. Because that's always what's hardest, I think, like working with bands generally, is that like
Yeah,
you're not getting paid steadily. You're doing a ton of work, you know, for months and months and months at a time to like make shows happen sometimes. And then they don't, you know, the deal doesn't work out or whatever, you know, like there's
yeah,
so much going into it. Like that's kind of why I like having my nanny job, because I'm like, okay, well, I know all my bills are paid with a nanny job, so like these projects can be like passion projects because I love them and not because I need money.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yes, I want them to make money and I would love to be able to as well, you know, and oftentimes we do, but like it's it's so much better when there's not that pressure of money on top of you. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a so recently over COVID, I've sort of become obsessed with Billie Eilish. And there's a great line she has in off the new album where it's and I don't want to misquote this. It's the things I once enjoyed now keep me employed. And I think that like there was a moment for me when I sort of heard that line where I was like, oh shit, yeah. And it was sort of like for me now being able to sort of return to, oh yeah, by the way, I live, I don't know if you can hear the motorcycles right now. I live in like a really cool section of Buffalo now. It's like the Elmwood, Allentown area. And I have my windows open because it's finally sunny and gorgeous,
Yeah.
but so much action on a day like today. And I live on a street that goes to the hospital, which
Oh,
is great because my street always gets plowed. It's one
yeah.
of the
We're
first
making
streets
sure
plowed.
that's
But if we hear sirens throughout the course of this, that's why. Um, yeah, but that's like been kind of nice because yeah, to that point, like it's so relieving to sort of have like the ability to be like, I know everything's paid, but also like, you know, because right now I'm just sort of, I am the management team. Like I'm tour managing, I'm merch managing, I'm just overall man, I'm doing all of it, which
yeah.
I love. And but you know, it's also nice because like having a little bit of like fiscal ability to sort of invest in the band, you
Yeah.
know, being like, I'm going to go print street team posters and hang them
Right.
because I want to do it and I'm going to do it because it's that investment I want to make. Or,
Yeah.
you know, like little things like that where it's like, I know the band isn't there yet, but I have so much faith that they're going to get there and that it's going to like pay me in spades and in dividends,
Yeah.
which I know maybe is a little bit of a bold statement to say, but
No, it's like
I'm
credit,
convinced of it.
you
I'm
know?
convinced of it.
Yeah, no, I feel the
Yeah.
same way because I manage a morphic and I still have a hard time saying that. Like I very much have imposter syndrome, like mega big time imposter syndrome.
no, it's not imposter syndrome. It's fake it till you make it. It's confidence.
I like that. Just flip it.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no. But it's very similar. Like, I'll just be like, hi guys, I bought some magnets because I just wanted to. You know what I mean? And I like kind of feel bad. Like, am I stepping on your toes by doing these things? Not because I want it to be a surprise. Like, that's how they're my friends first, you know. And I'm just like, I like to do surprises and like do little things for my friends. So like, sometimes I'll do something that's like kind of band managery, but also just like I want to do it because they're my friends, you know. And then later I'm like, fuck, like, are they upset about that? Like, did that make them uncomfortable? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think though, like, and that's what's been like, what's really been interesting for me, and I wanna think about how I'm gonna say this here. What's been interesting for me with this is that when I took on the role, I had a conversation with Todd where I was like, look, if I'm going to do this, I sort of need, like, I was like, obviously, like, I'm going to talk to you about stuff and I'm going to, like, we're going to make decisions together. But I was like, I need a little bit of autonomy. Like, I need for you to, like, trust that what I'm suggesting to you is a fair play. And, you know, and I have a little bit, cautiously, I say this, I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And some of that comes from like decades, like literal decades of working in the music industry and having ideas and watching my ideas dismissed and then watching other artists do those ideas instead of the bands that I worked with later and they be successful and I'm just like,
I told you.
Why? Like it's one of the things that I've come to learn that I'm sort of grasping is I want to give a shout out first of all to Michael with Annie in the Water. And I always screw up his last name. I think it's Lasham. If I'm pronouncing it right, if I'm not pronouncing it right, I'm so sorry. Besides being an incredible musician and performing with Annie in the Water, he's an intuitive astrologer. Ooh. And yeah, and he and I actually do quite a few, we've done a couple of readings. And one of the books that I'm really into astrology, and he gave me the suggestion of this book called Astrology for the Soul, which sort of dives into your North Node, which has to do, it's really a lesser known aspect of astrology. And it has to do a lot with sort of like your past life versus the lessons that you're supposed to learn in this life. And my North Node is in Sagittarius. And my whole life, I have struggled with trusting my intuition and trusting the fact that sometimes I don't know why I know something is the right thing to do. I don't have justification for it. I just know it. Yeah. I know it in my gut. And I think that's been part of my journey this time around. And I've even said that to Todd. I was like, look, sometimes I'm going to tell you that I think this is what we should do. And I don't know why.
You just feel it.
But I was like, and maybe it won't be right and we'll figure it out. But I was like, I just need you to know that like, I may not have justification for it. I may have no idea why in the moment that this is what I know should be done. But so for that, like, kind of going back to that, like sometimes I just do things and I'm like, this isn't like, you know, like I made you know me and my business cards. I love the business cards for passing out. Like I made Everwine business cards and I work at a venue. So of course, like when I see somebody wearing a Grateful Dead shirt or a Smashing Pumpkins hat or whatever it is, I'm like flipping it out of my pocket. And here you go. Like, check them out. That's, you know, like,
do you do the like codes on them? Like the QR codes?
So no, not yet, but that's coming. And I have a campaign. I'm not going to talk about it yet because I don't want anybody to, you know, snag the idea from me. But I have a campaign we're going to do with some QR codes and some stuff this summer that I actually have to get on top of. And so hopefully all summer long, people will be seeing the name and just be like, what? And yeah. So
Everyone.
Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. EV, not V, EV. Yeah. But yeah.
It's funny telling people band names. It doesn't matter what band it is, I feel like. You know, like I don't know, like with Aqueous is like Aqueous? Is it Aqueous?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a hard A. It's a hard A.
I still have so many of those things. Like people keep giving me those stickers back from summer camp that they held on to. You know the blue stickers?
Yes.
like they held on to, a bunch and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, I still have some. Like
yeah, and that was actually something that was so funny because that was one of those moments that came out of, we had a board. We had like a kind of similar to the board you have on behind you.
Yeah.
And it had like prices on it. Normally it was prices, but we'd sort of gotten away from using it. And I was like, what am I going to do with this board? And I just, to be funny, put on there aqueous. It's a hard A. And the guys loved it. And it just ended up becoming a thing. And it's so interesting in those moments, like how that sort of like happens because
spirals.
Because people would come up to the merch table and they would pronounce, they're like, I love aqueous. And it's like, you don't want to like, you want to be kind as like somebody with a band, but you also want to correct them because you want to be like, and then there was a great moment where Jesus from, Lettuce. Jesus from Lettuce came up to the merch table when we played with them in Phoenix, and he actually flipped it around so it was like it made it say aqueous as a joke, and like I was like, oh my god, because I had the phonetic spelling on it, so he changed the letters so the phonetics were wrong, and I was like, dude, you're killing me, But yeah, that was like a fun little moment.
I love that. I didn't know that that's how that came about. I mean, I knew how it came about. I knew people just say it. I had an argument with my friend Steve about it. This had to be like 2017, maybe. Yeah. And I was like, no, dude. Like, I just saw Mike. I didn't know his name at the time, but I was like, I just saw dude from that band play with like some guys from Humphreys last night, and they played Dookie. And he said their name was aqueous. I heard it out of his mouth. You can't convince me it's anything else because I heard it out of that guy's mouth,
Yeah, and I think some people do it because the word aqua, so aqueous, but it's a chemistry term, and in chemistry, it's an aqueous. It's an aqueous solution. So it's as I can tell you because I've heard the word so many times. So like, well,
that's what I'm working with this band called Amorphic. And people are always confused on how you say it, and it just reminds me of aqueous. I'm like, it must be the A.
I recently had somebody, they're like, oh, well, they should change the name of the band from Everwine to Everwine because it would be easier for people to remember. I'm like, it's the guy's last name. Come on.
Yeah, and also, what the fuck
We're not changing it.
Everwine is a thing. Like, that's not a thing.
I know it's not even a real world word.
If it was a thing, I would understand, but it's not a thing. So you can Everwine is not a thing. It makes
Everwine will be a thing though. I'm making it a thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll support. We could do some band swaps, like plan a vacation out here, and we'll
I'm down for it. Let's go.
Because two of the members of Amorphic are from the East Coast. They're from I think Caleb is from Baltimore, and I can't remember where Eric is from. I think somewhere.
Yeah. So let's do some show swaps. Let's get it going.
Yes.
Which has also been really fun this time around. I've actually been in touch with, I'm in this great email chain with a couple of women within the industry. One person from Saratoga, the other from Philly. We're trying to work on that. And so that's been really nice. Sort of connecting with other women in the industry, trying to figure out how to make it happen. So I'm excited. I'm excited about the future of all of that.
Yes.
And
there was one thing I wanted to talk to you about. You made a post maybe 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, about someone mistreating you in the industry out there.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about this. So it needs to be predicated. And now I'm not as worried about talking about it because I'm to a point where I'm not going to hide kind of what happened. And I've already sort of addressed it within my own art. So in December, I made a huge leap. I'll sort of give you the fun story on this. I was on a first date with a guy that I met online. And I had decided I had been wanting to do stand-up comedy forever. I'd been wanting to do it.
I love that.
I'm sorry.
I love seeing you do it. I love it.
Thank you. And I'd really been wanting to do it. And so in December, I was on this first date. We'd gone, he had a couple of cocktails, and then the place that does open mic was right around the corner. So we go there and he's like, you should do it. And I'm like, no, I just want to check it out. He's like, no, you should do it. And he ended up going up and signing me up and kind of sort of in the best possible way, sort of forced me to get up there and do it. And the minute I did it, I was like, oh, I love this. I love this so much. So I started doing stand-up, and I've been kind of dating on and off here since, July. I got out of a 10-year long relationship. And so I decided I was just going to sort of date. I wanted to see what was out there. I wanted to, know better what I want for myself and from the people that I'm with. So I started doing stand-up and kind of started dating a comic. And it was going really, really well until it wasn't. And, I'm really busy. I'm in school full time. I work full time. I don't have time for childish behavior. I'm in my 40s, and I expect that the people that I date are going to act like adults. And there was, I guess I'll give you the long version of it. He sent me a text message early in the morning, sort of letting me know he was thinking about him, and his body parts were thinking about me. And cool, that wasn't like, look, I'm words of affirmation. I'm here for it. It's a compliment. I'll take it.
I turned you on. Dope.
Yeah, cool, sweet, awesome. But what I will also say is that I was working until 3 a.m, because I had a show the night before, and I had an oil change to be at 9 o'clock. So I woke up at 8:15. I woke up late. I saw that he had sent me the message. My sister also sent me a message. I love my sister, but for some reason she has this insistence to communicate with me through Facebook Messenger. I don't know why. And my mom was having surgery that morning. So I'm literally on the toilet, having my morning moment.
Sure.
And I have time to literally respond to one message. So I'm texting my sister, get out of the shower, get off the toilet, jump in the shower, get to Orchard Park. And I'm, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, it's not even 9 o'clock yet. Like, I can respond to him later. It's not like this is an imperative. The house isn't on fire, pretty sure. And, and here's the deal. Look, I want gentlemen, if there is any gentlemen out there in this moment, here's what I want you to know about. All right. You sending any woman a message that early in the morning that your dick is hard because you're thinking about her does not make her feel special. It just makes you a dude. All right. It's biological. All right. It's what happens. All right.
So hormones are kicking in again. Dope.
Yeah. And the last time I checked 3 weeks ago, you and your hand were probably just fine. Yeah, so figure it out. What am I supposed to do about it at 7:38 in the morning from my house? You're not with me. Unless you're in bed next to me, I can't help you. So just give it a minute.
Yeah.
And as I was pulling into my appointment, he sent just a passive aggressive text message that was like, all right, then never mind. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second, dude. And I had already seen a couple of red flags within the sort of dating moment. And at that moment for me, I was just like, I'm not interested in this. This isn't the space I want to live in.
Yeah.
And as you can probably tell, as you know from personal experience, brevity, not my strong suit. So what I should have said back to him was, all right, then never mind. And it wasn't. I fired off something that was akin to the Declaration of Independence. And that triggered him. And he got mad at me, accusing me of copy and pasting my response, which as a writer, I was like, screw you, dude. I wrote all of that with thought. I was like, pearl clutch. How dare you insult my artistic integrity, even in this text message.
True.
And so, but then what immediately happened, and I will say this, that I said, what I've learned from this experience was in the moment, what I should have done was just been like, all right, dude, peace out, thanks, and then not responded to anything else. But I'm still learning how to deal with my own trauma and not wanting people to be upset with me.
Yeah,
So I kept engaging in conversation with him, and what I allowed him to do in that moment was start to gaslight me. He said that my response was an overreaction, that I was selfish, that I was a narcissist, that I was all these different things. And then what happened from there was, and this is what was interesting, and this is important to this whole long story, is that when I first sent that original message to him, I pretty much said, and I was pointed about it, you need more attention than I'm willing to give you. I think it's best that we both take a step back. I think we should probably end this before somebody gets hurt. And so I was very clear about that, but I continued to engage him in conversation, which I think led him to believe that we were still okay, that I didn't mean what I said. And then over the next couple of days, like it was like awkward conversation, and like I was busy and I wasn't responding as much as I, normally would. And then on Saturday, out of nowhere, he sort of sends me another message that was like, well, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, I don't want to do this with you anymore. And I was like, and instead I wasn't going to be like, I was literally getting ready to go see Billie Eilish, that I've been waiting months to see this concert. Yeah. And I didn't want to engage and I didn't want to get into it. So I was just like, all right, cool, dude. If things don't work out sometimes, no hard feelings. And then he started firing back. I do have hard feelings. You didn't apologize for your behavior. And I'm like, what behavior? Like, I told you, like, I literally have, okay, so I have a bit, so I do a whole a set about this where I actually say, he's right. I do need to apologize for my behavior. And then I turn around and I apologize to my vagina. And I say, I'm sorry, I keep letting assholes inside of you. Like, I'm going to try to do better. Like that's the only person I need to apologize for in this moment.
I'm sorry, like to unpack that. Yeah. He sent you some messages to clearly get something out of it. Like he wanted you to like entertain his mind space at the time, not taking it all into consideration what your mind space was at the time. Like
correct.
I'm trying to carry on and do people things because I'm a people and I'm gonna go do that now. And I don't have time for this fucking sext because I'm not 18. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
How about let's fuck if you want to talk, or
right.
Yeah, literally. Go jerk off. It's fine.
It's fine. But like, and what was funny was that what he revealed in the course of the conversation, that was what he was upset about, was the fact that he saw that I had been on Facebook Messenger and that I had not replied to him. And so, quote, how dare I leave a message like that hanging? And that I could go on Messenger and have a conversation and he saw it, but I couldn't respond to him.
There's so many levels of fucked up there. Like you're stalking me on Facebook to watch my actions, like so
to see if I was on there
about bullshit because I was talking to my sister, like
about my mom's surgery. My mother was having,
and you want me to talk about your boner.
Like what? But what was so crazy? I love your face like that. For a minute, I thought you were frozen.
No,
what was scary about it for me though was that this person went from being so demonstratively affectionate and verbally sweet and saying all the right things to being so verbally aggressive that it frightened me, because seeing somebody flip like that so quickly was terrifying, because where I live, I do open mics, where I work, I work late night,
even stuff like that.
And so now what was subsequently interesting was when I made that post, I had other people reach out to me. And even though I hadn't been public about who the person was that I'd been hanging out with, other people within the scene immediately were like, is this about this person? And I was godsmacked. I was just like, wait, what? And so at that point, I knew I wasn't alone. Now, this is a portion of the story I haven't really talked too much about, but I'm going to talk about it because I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. Because what's subsequently interesting is I did the set, and normally he's not there when I do my sets. Usually he leaves. And this one particular night, I was getting ready to do a show. And so open mics are where, comics will work through a lot of their stuff. And I had to work through it. I had to. And he was in the room when I did it. And that was terrifying to me, but also so much of like taking ownership and power back. But what was interesting, and this was an interesting moment, was that and this is scary for me to talk about because I haven't publicly talked about this yet. There's a couple of networking groups within, the Buffalo entertainment scene. And he happens to be the admin of those groups. Now, what's interesting for me is that, and this is where you can tell people who really are narcissists in this moment, had he done a bit of research on who I was. And I say this not to sound boastful, but I sometimes have people that I work with, and especially like musicians I work with, kind of remind me of this. I'm Kat Horton.
Yeah.
You didn't do enough research to realize who I was in the Buffalo entertainment scene,
Right.
to realize the reach and pull that I have, or to understand what I do or what I did to understand I understand how things work. So what he did was, immediately when everything went south, he blocked me across the board on social media. That is a tactic that gaslighters will use or manipulators will use, because then they can turn to their friends and go, oh, I had to block them on social media.
Yeah.
There's no reason, because you can unfriend and unfollow and never see somebody's stuff.
Yeah.
There was no reason to do that, except now you're flipping the narrative.
Yeah.
And then what he did was he removed me from the group that he ran, which is one of the only networking groups for this in industry within Facebook. So I requested to rejoin, and then when I looked a few days later, I couldn't find the group at all, which means he blocked me from the group.
Yeah.
Now, when I called him out on it later, because I did, and I said, look, dude, if you don't think that I won't take these like text messages to social media and call you out on this very disgusting behavior, I'll do it. And I have I feel like my reputation precedes me. People know what I'm about. I don't do drama. I don't do things. That was a thing. This is another classic move. When I told him that's what I was going to do, his response to me was, well, do what you want, but people are going to think you're petty. No one's going to think I'm petty, because people know who I am.
Don't do that.
And they know what I stand for. And so I pretty much told him, I like, fix the situation. And then he even tried to like, oh, I don't know why you can't see the group. Mother effer. I ran Facebook networking groups. That was literally, as you know, that was the communication hub. I ran dozens of them. I know how this works. Don't sit here and try to tell me and try to fool me.
You really think I'm
because
dumb?
you think that I'm stupid enough to not like see what's going on. And so, you know, I've been kind of like quiet about it, and I'm sort of like, it's hard because like I understand why now. Like, I've never been in this situation, and I know that a lot of people will look at women in any entertainment industry or any industry in general, and they say things like, well, why did you stay quiet? Why didn't you say something?
It's terrifying.
And it is terrifying. And even from a standpoint of, it's a matter of, you're revealing personal details about your life. You're revealing, you know, and I'll be honest with you, I'd have to admit that I dated the dude, which I don't even want to do, because now I'm kind of like, ooh, what was I thinking? Like,
right.
You know, like, and I'll even admit that. I'm kind of like,
it could be embarrassing, you know, like that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's not scary, even if it's just that, like the little bit of shame or embarrassment you feel about
and also too, like, you know, like ultimately what I recognize as well, and this is what I want people to understand, that like, it doesn't excuse anyone's behavior, but everybody has behavioral responses or behaves in certain manners. And I'm convinced of this based on their own traumas in their life.
Yes.
And people are the people who they are. And those things have developed over time based on those traumas.
Yes.
And, you know, and I kind of laugh about it now, because we had a couple conversations, and there should have been 2 red flags. Anyone who tells me, or if anyone tells you they've tried therapy and the therapist is like, therapy isn't for you, that should be a pretty big red flag. That like,
I've heard that. That's why
that person has some things that they're not willing to tackle and work
they're
through.
so good that therapy is not for them. Is that what they're implying?
Yeah. No, that they're implying that like they're just not a good candidate for therapy because they can't open up or do the work.
Like they're not
like and
so there's
that they're just not capable of getting to that space because they're unable to admit that there are things about them that are incorrect or wrong or need work. And also they're unable to like dive into those traumas.
Yeah.
You know, because that definitely is where that kind of stuff stems from. And I recognize now, because of hearing about this human's other behaviors, that this is all trauma response.
Yeah.
It's a trauma response to other things that they haven't dealt with. And so I want to always like, we live in such a weird cancel culture that I want to like, it's hard because me not necessarily being like hugely public about it is like, people still need to have their art. They need to have a livelihood. They need to have like all of those things to be able to like still be who they are as humans. And to take that away from somebody because of something that was like really, in all honesty, a poor experience. And when they were called out on it, they corrected it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now, am I going to keep my eyes open within the scene? And if I see fresh, new, young comics, female comics coming in and they're hanging out, might I give them a caution? Yeah, I might be like, hey, look, like, just, you know, keep your eyes open. Like, don't put your blinders on.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think that like for me, it's such a hard line to ride. You know, I look at it too, like this is kind of a digression, but I remember the whole sort of like shock and awe that happened with the whole Zach Deputy issue, which I don't like, with the whole like
months.
Say that again.
Was he the rapist who only went to jail for 6 months or something?
No.
Oh, okay.
He was at the Trump protest. And
I don't know.
Yeah. So he was at like the Trump protest, and I don't know if it was ever determined whether he was at the actual like the sort of convergence on the Capitol. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the January stuff. But it's like, you know, I look at that and it's one of those things where I feel like we live in such a dangerous cancel culture where we don't give people enough time to react and respond and to grow as humans. And, you know, when you look at, like, for instance, like for me, when I look at that moment, it's like, I want to look at people and they'll say things like, well, that's not what this scene or this community is about. But you're kind of like, you've got to look at it and be like, that may not be what this scene is about. But somebody being in and I hate to tell people this, if you think that the jam scene and the dead scene and the fish scene is full of all liberal left-wing hippies, you are so incorrect. You have no idea. There are plenty of people who are conservative and have different views. You have to look at somebody's life history.
Yeah,
you know,
the problem,
you know,
with
Zach is
identity politics is there's no one person is the same. So generalizing any group of people is a problem.
Yeah. And, you know, when you're looking at an artist that grew up in the South, in the conservative South, in a place where systematic racism is like not only taught, but encouraged.
Well,
again, it doesn't make it right.
In the culture. Like, it's so deep seated that they don't even know it's there. Like, they don't realize it's different than the rest of the world thinks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and what I hope that like we all need to learn and grow. Like, we all have to understand that people come from different backgrounds, and like you can try to have an open conversation with somebody and get them to change their perspective. And that's another thing too. Like, people having additional information and changing their mind about things is great. You know, like I can remember a time where I was a staunch, adamant person where I was like white privilege isn't a thing. I remember saying that. I remember those words coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, I grew up.
And then a friend of mine,
you know.
Yeah, you know, and then I had a friend of mine one day. We'd had a conversation. I'd sort of forgotten about it. A few months later, they said to me, they're like, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "What's that?" And they're like, have you been pulled over recently? And I was like, "No, not recently." And they're like, "Well, when you get pulled over, like, what's the first thing you think about?" And I was like, "Fuck, I hope I don't get a ticket." And they were like, "That's white privilege." And the light bulb went off. And I was like,
you don't have to think, fuck,
oh my God,
die right now.
You know, yeah. Like, and it was just that moment. And so I think that, like, kind of going back to that, you know, we'll see, time will tell. I don't know. I
agree with you 1,000% that cancel culture I think it's a huge problem. I think it's actually one of the biggest problems we face. And that's a reason that I started the show. Like, one of the major reasons, because it was when George Floyd was murdered, and then we found out about Base Nectar. And just like reading the threads on any conversation about either of those two topics, I'm like, people cannot be this heinous to each other because they're seeing it from a different angle. Like, we need to be able to have these conversations, and they'll be difficult. And you can be emotional about it, but you don't have to call the other person like a racist, a Nazi, a sexist, a piece of shit, a homophobe. And I see this a lot more, honestly, from the liberal side. where they think it's okay to judge Republicans, and both sides do it, and I'm not a part of either of those camps, just for the record. I don't agree with any of it, but you know, it kills me a little bit because people who I think are my liberal friends that I can have, like, we have similar views, all of a sudden cancel culture comes around and I can't even speak to my liberal friends about some of my thoughts, because at least not on social media, because they don't, it's so interesting that you think like we are real people and you've met me in real life, yet this is how you're talking to me because it's the internet. Like, you know, and like I tried to say at one point during the pandemic, like, it's not our job to monitor other people. And I stand by this wholeheartedly. Like, mandates are bullshit. You don't get to tell me what to do with my body, my fucking right. That's it. And what your job is to tend to your garden in such a way that you feel comfortable and protected. And that is my job in my garden. And I had these people who I thought were my friends, like, attack me for, and I wasn't saying it, you know, it wasn't to anyone. It was just like a general, like, and it wasn't even saying about the pandemic specifically. It was just like, my job is to tend to my garden. Your job is to tend to your garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of us should have a say, like, unless you're actually putting other people in danger, like, then you shouldn't get a say in what the fuck I do in my garden. You know?
Yeah, and I think that the most liberal mindset you can have, the most open-minded you can be, is to realize that other people have different views. And those views, like, it was that sort of like, God, I'm gonna totally misquote this, and it's one of the founding fathers. I think it might be Patrick Henry. I can't remember. Like, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death. You're right. You're right to say it. And that's my thing. I may not agree with your viewpoint, but that's your viewpoint. I will maybe try to help educate you if I feel like maybe you're missing information.
That's what.
But at the end of the day, like, and that is the most open-minded thing that you can do as a human, is understand that people are going to think differently than you, and they're going to, and that, like, it's the same way with music. I watch people in fan threads. Like, right now, there's this sort of in twiddle world right now. Like, Brooke, the drummer, announced that he is in rehab. He has not been playing with the band this past month. Adrian of Kung Fu fame has been playing with the band. And you'll watch people melt, because some people will go online and be like, I think the band is better with Adrian. And then other people are like, well, I think the band, no, I want Brooke. And like, people get into it with each other and they're so hurtful. And it's like,
it's all music. It's like, how about you're allowed to your opinion and I'm allowed to mine, and I'm not going to take offense that your life experience has given you this opinion instead of this one. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like, how about we just all wait and see what the band is going to do?
Yeah,
and then we embrace that, because this is the band we love and this is the music we love.
It's their art, and it's their, like, it's their passion, it's their creation. Like, it's so goofy that people are so tied to their own. Because the second you get emotionally tied to any idea or belief, you're fucked.
Yes.
Like, you can't see the trees through the woods, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. Like, even my friends, like, they hate Joe Rogan so much, and they think he's a meathead right winger. And I'm like, dude has never voted Republican in his life. Like, he's a Democrat or he's like a liberal. I wouldn't call him a Democrat even, because he's kind of like where I am. Like, they're all working together against us, so it's not great. But either way, like, and it's like not worth having the conversations with people to be like, Joe Rogan is actually pretty fucking solid if you'd listen to an episode or two.
Do you know what bothers me the most about Joe Rogan?
What
bothers me the most about Joe Rogan is I imagine that he has just like a closet full of like black Ed Hardy t-shirts like that.
No, they actually just talked about affliction on the show today. Like, I listened to him talking to another comedian earlier today. I'm not kidding. And he was like, well, you get all these people who don't actually do karate, but they just wear the gi, like they don't actually don't do karate at all, but they dress like it. And he's like, you know this because you do MMA shit, like UFC shit. Like, you know the dudes that walk around in affliction shirts. Like, And this guy, the comedian that he's talking to, is like skinny, like out of shape dude. And he's like, I'm not going to test that to see if he's actually a UFC fighter or not. I'm just going to trust that affliction.
Yeah.
He doesn't. I want him on the show. He'll wear like a plain ass gray hoodie one day with like literal sweatpants shorts. And his guest will be wearing like a suit.
Yeah.
Or he'll wear like band t-shirts and shit. Like he's a normal.
I've had a lot of people ask me my opinion about Joe Rogan, and I just sort of like I've never really listened to the podcast. So I've
been listening to him for years. I'm like, the dude is brilliant. Like he lives.
Yeah. I don't have an opinion. Like,
right. And I don't care so much. Like you can hate Joe Rogan. I don't care. Like what, that doesn't matter to me if you hate Joe Rogan or not. I like listening to him. He's actually a big inspiration to me because he showed me that you can talk to people on both sides of the aisle, whatever aisle you're on or in, and you can have a down-to-earth conversation with them. And it doesn't have to be a fight. And it doesn't have to be just like we're saying, like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm emotionally invested in this and I'm going to scream at you until, and I think most people envision that Joe Rogan like gets heated and because he's like a muscly fighter guy, you know? So I think that this image that people have in their own head is like he's a conservative hunter guy with a bald head that is angry and, you know, confrontational, and he's absolutely not. He's like one of the sweetest people you could listen to because he like genuinely cares about whatever topic they're having, you know, the conversation about, and he like picks it apart to see if there's you know, like, and if there's bullshit and he smells it, he'll pick it apart more. That's why he does, like, some people don't go on his show because they know that he will expose their bullshit.
And that's the nature of what, going back to stand-up comedy, like that's what's been really interesting for me to do with stand-up comedy is sort of like picking apart different things. Like Joe Rogan does it more for like his comedy is so different than you know, like, well, in much more successful, but you know, like my comedy has a lot more to do with like my own personal experiences, and I sort of pick those apart and pick apart,
right?
Yeah, and I pick apart, you know, my responses and how I behave and like what happens in the moment, and it's great trauma and therapy work. And I think that comics, in my opinion, and I say this with like a little bit of pause, but okay, so I think it's History of the World Part 1 Mel Brooks movie where like they do this thing where they call them stand-up philosophers. Mm-hmm. And really for me, like that's what a lot of comics are.
Yes.
They are. They're looking at things in society and they're getting you to think and to look at things with a perspective of humor.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, you know, and it's like, even like in this, like the whole bit I do with like calling this dude out for his shitty behavior, like I'm trying to do it with a sense of humor. And I'm also trying to turn the lens on me and say, hey, I was in the wrong because I did this, this, and this. And it's a process. It's a progression because like when I first started working on that bit, I was so angry and you could hear it. Yeah. And now I do it. It's so self-deprecating and funny.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't want to call it funny. I don't want to call my own stuff funny, but you know what I mean? Like it's a different world, but like, I feel that way with just like comics and cancel culture in general, you know, like to go back and look at something that a comic said 25 years ago and to then say, well, they should be canceled because this was a homophobic statement when like, that comic has like subsequently now is like I'm is it a what's the word I'm looking for? Shoot, is a I'm blanking is a ally. Yeah, you know, like somebody may have said something 25 years ago, but 25 years ago we were living in a different world, in a different political climate where
things. Like you were just allowed to, like culture just permitted you to say things that now to us, because we have learned and grown, sound horrific.
Yeah.
But back then it didn't, I mean, it probably sounded horrific to some people still, but like it was more acceptable, and like how you make money too. Like if you have to be fucking funny, and the only way you're funny is if there's shock value, right? Like there has to be some aha moment, like, gotcha. You know what I mean? Like, and I think like comedy is really in jeopardy right now because there's so much like censorship and so much cancel culture. And I think you would actually really enjoy Joe Rogan's show, especially if you pulled up a
maybe I'll give it a listen.
Seriously, one episodes with comedians specifically, he'll talk about how he writes a joke or how hard it is to come up with a premise and get the tags and, you know, work it out. Like he goes through his writing process sometimes. Like it's really interesting. And that's why like he gets a bad rap because he's a fucking comedian. So sometimes he says things off the cuff and then they record that little snippet without giving the whole picture. And now he looks like a dick and he's not a fucking dick at all. You know what I mean? It's bonkers.
Well, one of the things about comedy is you sort of have to be fearless. And so you have to, and sometimes like you say things and you're playing with words, and especially like comedy on a podcast, like you're playing with words in the moment and you think the joke is funny and you think it's going to land, but it doesn't. And sometimes like I have one joke I've shelved. I've been trying to work on it. I know the joke is funny, but I can't figure out how to make it funny, but also not make it offensive. And the gist of the joke, I kind of work it out here with you for a minute. The gist of the joke is that I talk about like how being a 46-year-old woman, a 46-year-old, you know, white woman, I'm predisposed to listen to true crime podcasts, you know, genetically predisposed for it. And that the one thing I've learned from listening to these podcasts is that I need to stop tanning. And not that it's like bad for my skin or anything. It's just that if I ever go missing, I need to appear as white as possible so that somebody will want to help find me. And anytime I tell the joke, it doesn't land. But I'm like, but it's funny because it's fucking true because we have people of color and
I mean,
and people
terrible, but that's why it's terrible. It's because it's true.
Right. It's like, and I want people to laugh at that for a minute, but also to be like, oh, sorry, my battery is running
I know we're getting
low.
close. It's been
I know, but like, and I know that if I just figure out how to place those words in the right like moment, that it can be hopefully maybe if, and that's my thing. That's sometimes what comedy is supposed to do. If one person looks at their friend at that moment when I say it and they're like, why would she say that? And then maybe that person is educated and says, oh, well, you know, women of color or women of indigenous backgrounds are marginally unlooked for and aren't given the same media attention as white blonde women.
Right.
You know, like
you lead into it with like, I don't know if you know this, but I'm kind of a social activist, like, and then talk about like how you care about like how people of color are treated. And then like, go back. And
but that's the problem solving. And that's what I'm learning about. I'm learning about writing in general. I have this great writing professor at school. His name's Ed Taylor. He's amazing. And that's one of the things he always talks about is that writing is problem solving. You're trying to figure out how to put the right words together to convey what your point is. And so comedy is no different. It's just problem solving. And so to that, like, when comics are like just riffing, you know, sometimes, and I can't tell you the number of times I'll be riffing with a friend of mine or riffing with a fellow comic and we'll crack jokes. And I'm like, oh my God, if somebody heard that right now, would sound that we would be in trouble. And it's not that any of it was meant with ill will or ill intention. You're just trying to figure out the joke. You're trying to figure out the funny.
It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be lighthearted. And like, you have to take, that's sometimes the only way you can shine a light on serious issues and actually have people listen. Because I tried to bring up, for instance, Groove Safe to one of my very best male friends in the world. White male. I won't say where he's from because it'll know. But and I'm trying to talk about Groove Safe, right? And this is not like nothing traumatic has happened at this point. We're hanging out at a mini festival, camping, and it's all of our closest friends. And I'm literally just like kind of describing what it's about and like how women have to go through, not only women, but like unfortunately so. And I was like just trying to describe it to him, and he like got so upset. He's like, "This isn't what I want to talk about right now. This isn't you know, whatever." And I'm just like, well, can you imagine a woman who like wanted to just have this chill time at a festival, like you're having, but instead of having to have a hard conversation, these actual things are happening to them, because I think this little bit of conversation between close friends is much easier than what we're going through and then not able to talk about because you're uncomfortable that we're talking about it.
Yeah. I know. Why, since you just brought up Groove Safe, hold on. I want to divert the conversation because this was something I talked about this past summer. And I really want to talk about this since we're talking about music industry stuff. I want people to take a second and remember that when we talk about unwanted touching at shows, it doesn't just apply to the patrons at the show. As a staff member and as somebody behind the merch table, I actually posted something about this this past summer.
I remember
I've had,
right?
Yeah, because it was multiple women will come up. And one specific like thing really stuck out to me because I was like kind of like bent over digging through a merch bin. And not only they came behind my merch table, which don't come behind my freaking merch table. This is my world. I don't care how well we know each other until I say, hey, come on, like don't come behind me.
Yeah.
But, and just like slapped me on the ass. And it was so infuriating. And I've even had that happen at like venues where like, I'll be like doing tickets or somebody doesn't like or I'm working the door or whatever it is. And they don't like what I've said to them and they'll put their hands on me. And I'm like, whoa, like, and even with like security, like if security asks you to leave a venue, you've done something. If you don't like the way that you've been treated in the moment by a member of security, your best bet is to politely leave the show and then contact the venue the next day.
Yeah.
Like contact the venue and say, hey, look, like, because then once you get physical or you get aggressive or you touch a member of that staff in any way, that's anything other, you've screwed it up. And this is my other thing I want to give all the people out there in music world specifically. If you are doing powders in the bathroom of a venue and you get caught and you are escorted to leave, I am so tired of seeing people post online bitching about getting caught from doing, what are they doing looking in the bathroom? I have a right to privacy. No, you don't.
No.
The minute you walk into a venue, you have purchased a ticket, you are doing an illegal drug in the bathroom. And if you die, you're risking a liquor license, you're risking the like everything. There's so much that could go wrong. And especially like, we see that happen a lot in the town ballroom because like we have bathroom attendants and those bathroom attendants start to notice when people are coming in and out and right, which is another thing, which is so interesting. Oh my God. We had this funny moment. So we're at our venue, we have signs that say one person in the stall at a time now. Good. Because the bathroom attendant saw in the women's bathroom that two women were in the bathroom and she's like, I'm sorry, you can't do that. And they're like, started calling her a homophobe. And it was funny because the woman's a lesbian and she's married to a woman. She's like, well, I'm definitely not a homophobe. Right. You can't both be in the bathroom. And it's not a matter of anybody's homophobic. It's a matter of it's for your safety.
Yeah. And especially fucking waiting in line to go piss and you're in there fucking doing lines with your friend. And I have to wait while I'm ready to pee my pants because you guys are too high to know what the fuck you're doing.
Right. But also just from like a safety standpoint, the venue is there to look out for you. Yeah. They're not there to like disrupt you. Because they're like disrupt your good time. If you can't go a 2-hour show without shoving ketamine up your nose, you have bigger fish to fry than whether the venue is spying on you. Mm-hmm. And I say that with love. I really do.
And the venue is not fucking spying on you. It's not that hard to tell when you're in there doing shit that's not what you should be doing in a bathroom. So
like if you're going into the men's bathroom stall 6 times in 2 hours, you either need to see a doctor about your prostate or you ate something and you probably shouldn't be at the venue to begin with. It's probably time for you to go. Like it's just, it's definitely, what a world.
That's one of those like the darker sides of the industry. I actually, I was talking to Rob, I think, about this recently, like a few weeks ago. And I was just like,
Rob from Aqueous?
Yeah. And I'm just how like the music industry is so fucking dark sometimes. Like, and it is a place of, I think, some of the most contrast that you will find, in any given area of life. I feel like that's kind of where some of the most contrast can be found is in the music scene, because it's both like the most powerfully healing and beautiful and bright light that you can experience, but there's also this other side of it that's just like the fucking dark side of the moon, and it's like the seediest, grossest, like, ugh.
Well, you're mixing essentially art and commercialism,
Yeah.
which is a whole other, we could do a whole episode on fan entitlement.
Yes.
And the way people feel as if, like, the one thing I see about this all the time, soundboards. If I have to hear about people being upset,
where are the
soundboards? Where are the soundboards?
No one gives a fuck. Buy a ticket to the live show, bastard.
Yeah, maybe the band didn't like how the soundboard sounded. Maybe there was a technical difficulty. But you know what? Just because you purchase the band's music doesn't mean you're entitled to know everything.
Right. Or have it like, as fast as you think it should be ready, because you have no idea what it takes to get there, you know?
Yeah, and it's difficult, and I applaud those bands that pump that content out the way they do.
Oh, yeah.
And granted, that's why those bands end up being, I think, really successful. But that isn't for everyone. You know, some artists, you know, it could be a nearly flawless show. And I know I have literally seen this happen. It's a near flawless show, and there's a 30-second guitar solo that home dude doesn't hit the right notes on, and he's so transfixed on that 30 seconds that they're like, nope, soundboards aren't going to ever see the light of day. But as the artist creating that content, that's their right.
Yeah.
You know, and as like, we could do a whole episode on that. Like, just how, like,
I'm like, I don't even.
It's
been an hour and a half. But, like, how long?
Yes, it has been. How do we do this? How do we like get on and we just like yammer for now? I know somebody, and I know at this moment somebody's probably watching this just being like, well, these two hens quit yapping.
No, bitches, we will not. No, seriously, I don't want to eat up your day, but like, I could really talk to you for
No, this is amazing. I love doing this, and I really appreciate you like having me on. And it's nice to sort of like talk about like what's sort of been going on. And life is great. Life is great. I'm glad COVID is sort of like unraveling itself, and things are returning to. I don't want to say they're returning because they're not. I hope that people will still continue to wash their hands, wear a mask when you're sick, don't go out in public when you're sick, stay the frick home. You know, like. Social distancing should still be a thing. If I'm standing in line, I don't need you breathing down my back. Just stay 6 feet back. Like, give me some space. So I hope, if anything, like we not even return, we sort of like maneuver into like a new world. But like,
it made everyone a little more mindful, but we can like come out of it a little stronger, a little smarter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We'll see. But either way, I'll have it back anytime. I love talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
well,
so
hopefully,
funny because like we never really had a heck of a lot of time together, you know. Like, but I would see you at shows fairly frequently, you know, and so it's great to have this time to actually dive deep, you know, about whatever the
love it. And
talked about.
I will tell you that you are included in some of my favorite bathroom mirror selfies. You are included in some of my favorite pre-show bathroom mirror selfies. So and hopefully the next time we chat, I'll have a whole new slew of those.
Yeah,
I'll have it'll be as I'm on the road with Everwine. I hope that I'm like in the next time we talk, the band has blown up, and that.
Fuck yeah, we'll get to Colorado dates. We'll bring Amorphic out to the East Coast for some East Coast dates.
Yeah,
it'll be great.
It'll be a good time. Yeah, hopefully Colorado. I feel like Colorado might be a thing sooner rather than later. So
yeah, dude. Like, even if you're just how many people are in the band?
5.
So 6 people you got to plan for, kind of.
Yeah. No, I know how these guys roll. We're gonna have a front of house. There's gonna be
12.
No, maybe 7, maybe 8. We'll see.
That's fair. Well, I'm just thinking. I'm like brainstorming. Like, we know plenty of people here, and you got places to sit. You like a nice little bop out for a little bit, play a couple gigs. But, but maybe we'll make it a thing. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, for sure. It's still my goal to come out east and hopefully now see you do comedy too. But I want to get out and catch some shows too. I've never been to shows.
Absolutely.
So cool.
Yeah. So if anybody, I just want to do a couple plugs if I can. If anybody has made it this far Instagram, TikTok, I'm at the Kat Horton. So TheKathHorton. I'd love to have more followers. I try to post some of my comedy stuff and then all the stuff about like the music industry. All the stuff about my comedy. I try to post stuff about music industry stuff, but also everwineband.com and at everwineband is all the socials if you're interested in checking them out too. So please go like, subscribe, smash buttons,
follow,
thumbs up, follow. Yeah. Follow.
All right. Great. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye. You